Alright, so I recently finished playing through BoltBot Screwy Viruses, a little 3D platformer indie game. I actually found this one on X/Twitter because the page for the game just randomly started following me one day. I think it was after I had a video on another 3D platformer, but like I said, I saw they had this game out, thought, hey, I like supporting indie devs and I like 3D platformers, so naturally I picked up the game, planned to play it ASAP, but unfortunately I got distracted and forgot about it. Then I saw that the game left early access, had its full release recently, so felt like a good time to finally go back and play it. Right off the bat, this game definitely gave me, at least in terms of presentation, B tier 3D platformer vibes. You know, maybe alongside your the Tasmanian Tigers or your Glovers, you know, trying to break through and compete against the Marios, the Sonics, the Crashes. And that's good, though, because that's honestly what I would expect from this kind of project. I will say the overall physics of the game, I know it was made on Unity, I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but it felt different, and not necessarily in a bad way. And I can't put my nose on exactly what was different. I want to say it may have had something to do with a certain level of smoothness or just air gravity with your jumps. It just wasn't what I was really used to from the genre in that regard. Not to say that there's any sort of learning curve, or like I said, some people would probably even say it's an advantage because, you know, it makes it a little more unique. Probably the biggest issue with this game from a gameplay perspective is that it tries to be a collectathon but have linear level design. And I'm not saying you can't pull it off, but it's a lot harder to pull off. You know, the collectathon thing is meant a lot more for, you know, the open world 3D platformers, because, you know, if you miss something, you can kind of go a new, unique way to, you know, just quickly go back there and find it, you know. But in a linear one, you're kind of doing the same thing all over again. And like I said, there's ways that I feel like even this game in particularly could have helped make it work. Like if you go back to repeat a level, if they maybe let you select a checkpoint to skip to, or at the checkpoints, if they even just had a little UI that listed, you know, if you're going for completion, you know, how many bolts you should have when you pass this checkpoint, so you know, oh, better go back and find out what I'm missing before I continue on and potentially get locked out of this area. I also didn't like how bolts were an all or nothing deal, because there's like, you know, 100 or 200 per level, and it's like, if you're missing 10 or less, I believe, they let you buy the collectible you get from getting all of them with coins you get in the game that are, you know, a separate thing. But it's always 200 coins. It doesn't matter if you have 10, doesn't matter if you have 1. And if, you know, you're missing 11 bolts, you don't even get to buy them. And I just wish, I feel like a better system would have been if they let you buy, I mean, it's 200 coins for 10. So if, you know, for 20 coins, you can buy one of the bolts you were missing. So that way, if you're only missing 1 or 2, then it's only 20 or 40, and you can still have the opportunity to buy, you know, 12, 13 of them. But then once again, because it is a decent amount, you'll probably run through your coins pretty quick if you are missing a lot of them consistently. And even with the coins too, because you can buy shopkeepers, but I'm going to be honest, it was probably explained and I probably skimmed it a little too quick, because I have no idea what the purpose of the shopkeepers even was, honestly, other than I think an achievement if you get them all. I will say too, with the little overworld for, you know, your level selection, they have you go through in first person, which I didn't particularly like, honestly, but I will give them credit. It is kind of unique. Can't really think of another 3D platformer that did it that way. But in general, I just didn't like that. Or in the background of the gameplay here, there's this item that's more first-person based that I also wasn't as big on. But that's, probably more of a personal taste thing for me. Something else that also kind of relates to the collectibles is that in each level you have to reobtain pretty much every ability besides roll, and that even includes jump. And at first, I was actually, I could see them doing some fun things with that. But unfortunately, I feel like it was only used really creatively and well in, maybe 3-4 levels out of, the 30-ish levels you have, excluding bonus levels. And I wouldn't necessarily for, the core level that it was a holdback, but once again, if you want to go back and get collectibles, you probably want to just zip right through the beginning of the level, past the little, puzzle or whatever they may give you to get your abilities, but that's just not an option. Once again, another way they could have made completion a little more approachable. Something that stood out to me right away, though, was the level design of the first world. For me personally, I feel like it hit such a near perfect balance of having, collectibles found, in creative, rewarding spaces without, necessarily ever feeling unfair. Unfortunately for the game, though, World 2 was rough, in my opinion. It just never clicked with me. And once again, I don't know exactly what it was. It was probably like a lot of, little things. I guess the top couple things that come to mind is, dying in the middle of the checkpoint. I feel like there were some, slower paced areas that I wish I could have, sped up to, get back to where I was. And there was also a glider power-up, and granted, it was only used in like 2 levels. And it was only really an issue in one of those levels, I believe the one you get it in, but it just felt way too unpredictable. And I tried a lot of different things to try to, guide where I was trying to glide, but nothing really seemed to be working. And like I said, at the end of that one level, there's a section with this string of gliding sections that, require a lot of precision. You don't have a lot of, wiggle room or forgiveness, and that was rough. And that was honestly the point, too, where I gave up on 100% completion, because I believe after that point, I went and I saw, I'm missing some bolts, I think I was missing just about everything. Nothing fully complete. And it was like, well, damn, I either have to kill my character here and redo that section, because there wasn't an easy way back or anything, and I definitely didn't want to redo that section, so I was like, you know what? Not worth it anymore, especially being less than halfway through the game and already at a point like that. Luckily, the game did recover quite well at Worlds 3 and 4, which were the last 2. Each world, of course, has its little technology pun, too, of course. But yeah, I feel like World 3 was probably the best at distinguishing each individual level, aesthetic-wise. But I feel like World 4 was overall a bit better level design-wise, although still never really reaching the heights of World 1. Like in World 1, I think there was only a couple levels, and I was maybe missing a coin or one of the other collectibles, where there I was missing, a bit more than that. And like I said, I was already past the point of return of not going for completion, so I never really bothered to, go through some of the levels like I did the ones in World 1 to try to go further with it. The carnival level in World 4 was probably my favorite overall. Something else, though, that could be a deal breaker if you're looking to play this game. Honestly, I had a lot of technical issues, especially early on. Once I sort of figured out how to get everything to work, it was fine. What I particularly had issues with is I was originally going to use an Xbox gamepad like they recommend right away, but the menus just didn't work right with it. And I feel like the sensitivity with the aiming was, way too high. So then I switched to mouse and keyboard, and unfortunately there isn't custom controls, but I was at least able to use G-Hub for my Logitech mouse to remap a few buttons to my mouse to make the controls a little more, comfortable and to my liking. But I know that's not something people should feel like they have to do or have the ability to do in the first place. But an even bigger issue, though, was, and I'm on an AMD. I know AMD tends to not be as popular as NVIDIA. It's a smaller game. Maybe they didn't have anyone really testing things on the AMD side, but my computer should be more than enough capable of running the game. But I kept having major stuttering, like once or twice a level, the whole game would just about come to a stop for a second or two. And I was originally going to put up with it, but I was playing, Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy around the same time, was running perfectly there. And then one time after playing BoltBot, Stranger of Paradise started doing the same thing BoltBot was doing. So I don't know if there was some sort of software hang up. I mean, after a fresh boot cycle, it stopped. So at that point, I was still only in World 1. I was probably just going to, just do a video on World 1. I only had a couple levels left, so I was just going to record it. But after completing that couple levels, recording with OBS, I realized, wait, it didn't stutter at all. Then, I try World 2 with OBS in the background, this time not recording, and once again, for whatever reason, still not stuttering. I don't know why, but for some reason OBS fixed that issue for me. So overall, if you can push through, a world like World 2 that you may not like, or if you're, okay, maybe putting in a little extra work to make it work correctly, or if, even just, think what I mentioned would help the game work well for you and not really affect anything else, then I would say go for it. It's overall, a fun experience, and, I hope to see more from the developer. It's flawed, but, there's some potential here I can see.